Hey guys, it's International Master Alex Astaneh here, and in this shorter video, we're just going to be solving these two positions that were assigned at the end of the previous video in this series, just for anybody who actually was interested in solving them and having a little bit of homework. Now, even if you didn't actually try to solve them, then you just want to see the actual explanation, then that's also perfectly good and something that you will learn from. Okay, so one actually, the first puzzle here, the question was, how would you play? Would you play actively or would you play passively? And the correct answer is that active play here would be best. And the reason why white should not worry about passive, more conservative play, more reactionary play, is that white actually has a bunch of advantages in this position. He has the better pawn structure, and he has the fact that black has not completed his castling, means that overall white is better on the development front. It's true that this bishop here on c1 is still on its starting square, but even on its starting square, it can actually really influence the game already, whereas black having his king still on a starting square is a bigger problem. So overall, therefore, moves like pawn to h3, which is one of the suggested moves, make a lot less sense and would surrender some of the advantage. In fact, it's interesting that if after h3, black were to, let's say, castle, and now white were to play another sort of too conservative move like king h2, then from the starting position, this, by the way, was taken from a game played by Bobby Fischer with the white pieces against Petrosian, I believe. And in this position here, white is considered to be clearly better. For those who are familiar with computer terms, it's more than +1. So it's almost the equivalent of having a pawn, an extra pawn in this position. This is how good the position is for white. However, after these silly moves like h3 and king h2, just giving black enough time to do two things. Number one, castle on the first move, and on the second, after this, it's really not even, black hasn't done anything. It's just giving him the turn. So the difference between one position and another is that white really hasn't been doing much, and all of the white edge revolves really around the fact that black still hasn't coordinated. So therefore, there are many ways to play here, but active plans definitely make the most sense. One plan, for example, might be a move like a3, and after castle, you may consider b4, trying to mobilize this majority. This would be a sort of an active possibility. But the much more natural possibility is any kind of bishop move. And that's what Bobby Fischer went for. He went bishop to e3, and I believe black castled here, and then the move bishop to c5 happened. Now, this also goes into positional play topics for those who are enjoying this series or like my instructional style on chessfactor.com itself. There is a series that I made on positional play, which is one of the, it's in fact the most comprehensive chess series that I've made for Chessfactor. So if you want to work on your positional play, then this would be a good option to consider. But we won't talk too much about the reason why exchanging these bishops is good. In a nutshell, if we can exchange these bishops, white can then put his knight to c5, and he can create a lot of pressure against the black points, as well as that black's pawns are on light squares, meaning that this bishop here tends to have less diagonals to go to and is able to influence the game less than the dark square bishop. So it's quite a common idea that if most of your opponent's pawns, especially the central pawns, are on light squares, you might seek to exchange the dark square bishop. And so that is how the game went. But had you chosen in your answer that I want to go bishop e3 and then after castle maybe I go bishop d4, that would also be a very nice way to play. Or maybe you decided knight to c5, that would also be a nice way to play. I believe one of the candidates that I had considered, that I had mentioned, would be knight b6. This would be less accurate since after rook to b8, black reacts to your threat, it looks like a really active move to put the most active move to put your knight on b6 and hit with a double attack, but concretely it doesn't do too much for you. After bishop e3 defending the knight, black can castle now, and you might say bishop takes a6 here. As a result of my active play, I've managed to win a pawn. This is where chess gets a little bit tricky, because while you've won a pawn, you can also say that your pieces are a little bit shakier than before. The bishop on a6 is undefended, while the knight on b6 is only defended by your bishop. As a result, black has ideas like d4, bishop takes d4, and now the move rook f to d8. Now you have to respond to this, let's say bishop e3, and now the move knight g4. So we can see that concrete calculation of what was the most active move turns out to have led us to the conclusion that knight b6 is not a very good move. But this is where the two different video series, one on decision making and one on calculation, they kind of interweave, in the sense that here our general decision making should point us to a move like knight b6 to become a candidate move, a move that we investigate. Concretely, because it's perhaps the most active move in the position. Concretely, it doesn't work, and it turns out that a plan like bishop e3 to c5 appealed more to Fischer, and that also makes a lot of sense. But the final closing remark on this is that I would be very, very happy to look into this and to try and calculate the consequences of it from this position. But for those who remember the previous video to this one, in the first position, I really did not want to push that pawn on d6, the position we spoke about, because the conditions were bad, and I understood black was the one there that had a far better position than me, and if I go ahead and I play a move like d6, it's probably going to have bad consequences. All right, so this was number one. Let's now talk about number two. Okay, so in this second position here, I had mentioned some more conservative options against the threat of capturing the queen. And those were moves like knight to e7, bishop to e7, and f6. Just trying to react to the threat. And of course, moves like knight e7 and bishop e7 appeal the most, in the sense that the knight e7 move develops the knight, while the bishop here seeks to exchange a couple of minor pieces within those three moves of bishop e7, knight e7, and f6. But we had also talked about some more active possibilities. Actually, we had also mentioned the move queen e8 as a little bit more of a passive one, and then queen c7 or queen b6 or queen a5 as increasingly more active possibilities. So let's run down. I'll give you the answer, and the answer is a passive move, or a more reactionary move, less ambitious, was in order here. And so I gave the most focus to moves like knight e7, bishop e7, or possibly f6. I very quickly was able to rule out the moves f6 and knight e7. The reason is f6 creates a huge weakness here on g6, which his pieces are pointed at. Therefore, after bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, rook takes g6 check, we can see that white will recover his piece on f6, and with it a crushing attack as well. So this is a dead end. Knight e7 was also very unattractive, because if nothing else, white can give this check and then grab this rook on h8. And it's not just giving up an exchange, because after I take back this piece in this particular sequence, I can also lose the pawn on f7. So this one was very, very unattractive to me also. And as a result, I played the move bishop e7. Of the more active moves, I actually did not even consider. I did not consider the move queen a5, for example. That would be maybe one of the most aggressive options. That, after bishop f6, I think would have been curtains. Knight takes f6, queen takes f6, king g8 in order to not lose the rook. And then after bishop takes g6, this is actually already forced checkmate. The white pieces, there are simply too many around my king. And as you can see, my queen on a5 is doing nothing. Queen c7 might have been, if I had to move my queen, probably this one I would consider. But again, bishop f6, knight takes, queen takes, and when I move my king, bishop takes g6. It's the same sequence. That would leave, as far as queen moves go, the move queen e8. At least this one, if I really had to move, maybe this is actually what I would do if I had to move my queen, because at least I defend these pawns. Therefore, after bishop f6 check, knight takes, queen takes f6, now I can maybe move my king somewhere and still survive. In fact, if you check this from a computer perspective, the answer is that after king h6, in fact, black is okay. White is still a little bit better, but black is in the game. However, the problem after queen e8 is that white can actually just reroute this knight, bring more firepower to bear on my king, and my queen on e8, it isn't really doing too much. It's a horrible square. It's very, very passive in the sense that, and I know that that's sort of what we're talking about in terms of passive continuations, but what I mean here is the queen is just very ineffective rather than passive. So it's ineffective in the sense that it's pointing at a bunch of my own pieces and pawns, and so it has almost no moves. If you had to move the queen, given that white controls these squares, you would have to place the queen on f8, and this is just too unpleasant. So I rejected the move queen e8 on the basis that I felt I need a reactionary move. Queen e8 is a reactionary move, but a better reactionary move is bishop e7, looking to exchange these two bishops. And once those bishops come off the board, I can start to think about developing my knight. And but right now, all I was looking to do is I just want to get to survive this position, because that is the biggest thing in order to determine whether you should play actively or passively here. It is to consider how is the king's safety, as we already spoke about before. And in this case, my king is not in this example, but I mean in this series. In this case, my king is clearly a lot worse than his king because I'm being subjected to an attack and my pawns are actually quite advanced already. So this is making my structure more fragile here. And on top of that, my pieces are also worse. While white has one piece that is not in the game, I have at least two pieces not in the game. And we can say that all of these pieces over here are also quite ineffective. So overall, my pieces and my king, they're much, much worse. So I shouldn't be thinking about anything too ambitious, like, for example, the move queen b6, which would create a very aggressive, it's an aggressive move. It creates a very serious threat of capturing this pawn on b2. I simply don't have that time. I cannot afford to go creating threats like these of my own, because the house is burning on the king's side. So hopefully that makes sense from a decision-making point of view. So that brings us to the conclusion of this video. I hope it's clarified the main takeaway of active play versus passive play, which is that from a decision-making process, we usually are looking at our active options when our pieces are better coordinated, when our king is safer, our position is just better. So we can strike and take active measures. More passive measures are more, in this case, when our situation is worse than our opponent's, our current position is worse, and we're sort of, repairing our position. We're trying to kind of, we see there's a leak somewhere and we're just plugging that leak. And later on down the line, we might go for more ambitious stuff. But being too ambitious, being over ambitious in positions that are too bad is the fastest way to, or one of the fastest ways to lose a game of chess. I hope it's been more or less clear, my explanations on this difficult topic. If you've enjoyed this video and are enjoying the series so far, please give it a like. And of course, if you like the type of content we put out there, please subscribe. It helps us to grow the channel and of course keeps us motivated along the way. Hope you've enjoyed, and I shall see you in another video soon. So until next time.